In business, there's two types of decisions that are critical when you are decision making. There's below bow decisions and above bow decisions. And from those decisions determine what type of risk is involved in your decision making towards your business. So, for example, below bow decisions are decisions that can cause serious harm to your business. Ideally, below bow decisions are basically, if you could see the ship below, it's decisions that are made below the deck of the ship. So the very bottom of the ship's hull, as you can see towards where the water line meets the ship, that is what you call below bow. So typically, when you look at these two types of business decisions, below bow and above bow, below bow decisions are very hard to deal with because they can potentially basically take your business and cause it to actually go out of business, because you got to look at it from a perspective of how hard it would be to plug a hole below the ship where the water line is. So imagine the ship is actually taking on water. That actual water line, the water coming in, is very hard to plug the ship versus an above bow water leak that's coming in. So uh, basically, the decisions that can cause your business to ultimately go out of business are below bow decisions. For example, scaling too quickly without enough liquid capital is a below bow decision. Like, for example, I know a businessman that I knew had a business. It was a restaurant that sold various different turkey-based products like turkey burgers and turkey wraps and all of that type of stuff, as well as he had vegan options as well. And this was in the south side of Chicago. And he scaled very quickly. He opened a whole bunch of stores. And about 2 or 3 years later, he ultimately went out of business. So that's an example of scaling too quickly. Start off solid with one business. You basically achieve enough capital where you are very, very well funded in case something ever happened. So when you're in that case where you're very well funded, you have enough capital to actually start another business, another location. So in that case, you can do so, but to start 3 or 4 or 5 locations at one time can ultimately lead to you making a below bow decision. Another case example is Theranos, founded in 2003 by a 19-year-old Stanford dropout, Elizabeth Holmes. Theranos soared in valuation after the company claimed to have revolutionized blood testing by developing testing methods that could use surprisingly small volumes of blood, such as from a finger prick. Those claims were later turned to be false, leading to possible charges being filed for fraud. So basically, what Theranos made as far as their below bow decision was to lie to their investors and other parties that were involved. So they basically claim that they can create some type of rapid testing module that can test within like a certain amount of minutes, because typically blood testing takes quite a while, sometimes 24 to 48 hours. So this would have been something that was like revolutionary, something that would have been like never done before, almost to the equivalent of like kind of sort of like landing on the moon, but not that big of a deal. But it'll be, something that's just never, it's nothing out there like that. So it was a very big deal. As you can see, as if you read her bio, if you've done research on her, she was like basically who's who amongst like, young up and coming startup CEOs. And I mean, she was on her way to be like the next female Mark Zuckerberg. But the only problem that she made was that she lied to her investors. And from doing that, it was basically just turned out to be a shell game. And even, startups, they, even if you just, don't lie, for example, a lot of startups do fold because they just can't, produce what they actually were funded to do. So as far as what she should have done, she should have just basically told her investors what was going on and tried to shelf the idea, and then also just try to do something else to make money for your company. Because the thing is that sometimes you have to shelf ideas or projects to basically come back later, or just ultimately it didn't work at that time, and maybe shelf it permanently because you just have to move on. Well, she didn't give the opportunity for that to be the case because she lied to keep up funding, to keep the game going, which ultimately led to the company now being liquidated, and also her being possibly facing litigation as we speak. So that was definitely a below bow decision. You should definitely not lie to your investors. You should definitely tell them what is actually going on. It's really a deal where the investors already know that they're taking risks. If you tell them, what's going on and be forthright with them, they will make the decision where if they want to continue investing or, not. Okay, so, that is what ultimately you should do in that case. Above the bow decisions are serious and matter, but they don't put your business in jeopardy of, seriously closing or possibly filing bankruptcy or anything like that. So above bow decisions are something that you want to take serious, because sometimes above bow decisions can become also below bow decisions. So, as it says, pretty much the rule of thumb is above bow decisions are something that you can pretty much patch up within one day, to maybe have a quick meeting about, or actually might even have to, contact, have a very serious meeting and make a decision. For example, hiring too many employees is an example of a above bow decision. So, for example, you hear about a lot of companies such as Disney World, or Disney per se, they recently let a lot of their employees go, basically laid off a lot of employees. A lot of times that happens. That's typically an above bow decision. A lot of companies face layoffs, and it's not necessarily positive news, but it's the decision that's made usually because there's something going on as far as the demand for the actual company's services or products, or just to make a economic decision for the company as far as in the future to lower the budget basically of the balance sheet for the business. That's typically something that is done, and that is definitely a above bow decision. So rule of thumb with both of these above and below bow decisions, you just want to make sure that you take the above bow decisions serious. And for the below bow decisions, you definitely want to have, series of, experts as much as you possibly can before you actually make a decision. Have, serious meetings regarding the decision making and outline a plan for this decision. And you definitely want to deal with it right away, because in the case of a below bow decision, you don't have that much time before water takes over the ship and ultimately your ship sinks.